Well, hello there, and welcome to the Queens of Noise podcast, a behind-the-scenes look at the making of our short film, Queens of Noise. I am the co-writer, co-director, Camille.
And I'm Jeff Dempsey, the other writer and director.
The purpose of this podcast is to just give you that behind-the-scenes look through our conversations. And we're going to be having conversations together as writers and directors and with some other key people involved with the project. But this is the first episode of the podcast, and it's very timely because it's actually, we're recording this in December of 2025, which makes it,
pretty much
close to the 1 year anniversary or the 1 year mark of the creation
of the pilot script. I was in the beginning of the journey on this, but it certainly was a big sort of milestone for us.
Right.
Was to actually take all our ideas and all our sort of like rantings over the last probably 3 years, 4 years, if not 4 years, and kind of compile them into a 50-page pilot script, which we've been talking about for the same amount of time.
And so this episode in particular is focusing on how we wrote that pilot script, but how we then turned that 50-page pilot script into an 18-page short film script, which we shot this past summer of August 2025.
Yeah. So we're going to go through kind of the whole process of starting from a bigger script, sort of a longer exposition, sort of a longer arc in general. And we're going to talk about, how we crafted the story then for that longer form, and then why we decided to pare it down to a smaller format and go that way. Even though short forms get a lot of flack, or short films rather, get a lot of sort of like, oh, you're never, you can't make money with that or whatever. We just wanted to make our idea regardless of length.
Well, and so I think that's kind of an interesting thing to point out, because we have done 2 test shoots for this concept of, these 2 characters of
very
Chloe
scrappy
and Lizzie. Yeah, they were scrappy test shoots. They were, in complete, full transparency, not a whole lot of time spent in the writing process. And for us as the creators and the co-writers, co-directors, it's very obvious in how the characters come across on scene, how the world comes across on the screen, how it didn't meet our expectations. Neither of those test shoots met our expectations.
Yeah, they were definitely great exploratory, sort of challenges and things for us to learn from.
But they weren't quite there yet. And so that's why we've always wanted this to be a TV show. And it wasn't until I think there was a contest in October of 2024. It was a pitch deck contest to pitch your TV show or film idea.
Yeah, and that's when we put the pitch deck together.
Yeah, and that's when we put the pitch deck together. And that was the first time that we had sat down to say, let's really, really think about what this short or what this show looks like, who these characters are, what the world is, and what the story really is. And that's not to say that we hadn't thought about it before, because Jeff and I are always talking about the project. We've started thinking about Queens of Noise probably since 2022, and just constantly sort of going back and forth about it and shooting ideas off of each other. But and then we made those test shoots. But that particular pitch deck contest was an opportunity for us to really just conceptualize more of this longer term or longer form trajectory of the world and what we saw and what it looked like and yada yada.
And it sort of challenged us to sort of get it out of our brains, I guess, and put it on paper. So that's what we did for that. And then once we did that, we were like, holy crap, this is cool. We gotta,
exactly.
we gotta like write this.
Yeah.
And then so that kind of pushed us into the zone of, okay, how does this unfold?
Yeah.
What does this look like? What is the, when does the bad guy get introduced? When does, how do we, sort of tell the story of these two struggling musicians who we've been dreaming of sort of their scenario, and how do we make that unfold on screen?
So I think 2024 was an interesting year for this concept in particular because of that pitch deck contest, but also because of the 48-hour film project that we were a part of in July of 2024. And that it sort of sparked within you and I this hunger to do something of our own, to have the same sort of collaborative project, to have the same sort of energy and creative push to make it. And so we really knew that in summer of 2025, we wanted to shoot something. We wanted to produce something. Yeah.
Looking at it from October, November timeframe, we were like, okay, well, we're going to shoot something cool now. And it's going to be, and the only thing it can be is this Queens of Noise concept, because we're so tied to it.
Right. And then, so we did that pitch deck, and that really helped us look at the world. And that got us very, very, very excited about writing the pilot. But we were also kind of like, okay, how the hell do we do this? Like I have a writing background. I have a background in creative writing. My degree is in English literature and creative writing. I've taken a ton of creative writing courses. I've written my own book. I've been, a journalist, sort of quasi freelance. And I've studied a little bit of screenwriting, but hadn't done much of it.
Yeah.
And hadn't certainly done any pilot screenwriting, pilot episode. Right. So for me, it was just, I just started looking at other pilot scripts to see, how do you even do this? Like, how do you start this?
Yeah.
Because that's just, for me as a writer, I have to kind of look at what other people have done to then give my mind this sort of green light to be like, oh, well, they've done it this way, so you can do it that way, but you can also kind of change it.
Yeah. You can make your own rules up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so...
so there was that for me. I was just...
There's a lot of trepidation with like kind of tackling any big creative project like this that you're going to have to shell out a bunch of money for.
Well, we didn't know what
time.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's not our full-time job. I think I happen to work at a university where we have lots of gear and we have lots of resources at that time. And so that helped me there, but I also not really that seasoned at, narrative screenwriting.
Right. We're
both a little bit, green in that regard.
We're seasoned at talking about it.
But I've been doing production video, in a commercial sense for 20 years. So a lot of, behind sort of like, there's a lot of things that exist there that, helped us get to it.
But I took a pretty intensive screenwriting course that gave me a good foundational background to at least approach drafting the pilot. And you're familiar with beat sheets. I mean, I came into your classes a couple times to talk about these.
Yeah. So we, I guess the point we're trying to make is that we've been doing this kind of stuff for a while, but this is our, what?
I was just bringing that up because that's where we started with the pilot. Is we were like, let's write out a beat sheet.
Yeah.
Let's write out what it is. What are the points that we want to hit? What are the scenes that we kind of feel are important to this script?
Right.
And we started doing that through Post-it notes.
Yeah, on the closet door. We just kind of like we would think through, scenarios and then write it on a Post-it note and slap it up there. And then we were able to kind of change the order of those. Because
what we knew is that we had sort of the basis of the story, which is that these two somehow stumble upon dirty cash, and that dirty cash has an owner. who wants that money back.
Yeah, and then they get basically bound in servitude to that owner.
Right.
To some degree throughout the series.
I would say indebted more than bound in servitude.
Well, yeah, kind of like drug mules for the guy. To some degree, he's sort of like holding this over their head.
Right. And so we had a general idea of what, like, the gist of the pilot episode in order to kick off the series. We knew that Chloe and Lizzie, our lead characters, have to find this money that belongs to Darick, who's one of our, I guess we can call him an antagonist characters. And that he then says, you owe me for the money you stole and you have to do these things for me.
Yeah.
We didn't know how we were going to get there. And that's where the Post-it note exercise really helped, because we were able to just start talking out our ideas, writing them on the Post-it note, and then putting them on that closet door and going, wait, what if that happened before that? And so the Post-it notes are great because you can just move it around. Yeah. You can move the story around. It's not fixed. I think that's one of the ideas, that the hesitance of, writing anything is you think it's unchangeable. As soon as I put it on the paper, I can't change it. And that's not true. You have to give your brain this chance to switch things around. You have to say to it, like, hey, this is not inflexible. Like, this is totally adaptable.
You can tell it however you want it to unfold. Right. And I think that was one of the things that, speaking of that, the sort of framework that we had in mind from the get-go, because we really like, let's say, of course, the Breaking Bad series. And we really like, of course, Better Call Saul. We like the Boardwalk Empire series. We like, there's certain series that we really like. And all three of those, the very first episode, you start with sort of later point in time. And that's what we wanted to do with this, is we wanted to sort of show this intense moment that unfolds before, or we want to show it before it actually happens.
Yeah, so that's like a creative writing technique, kind of. When you start a story in the middle, it's called in media res. And you're starting at this point, this really sort of high point of tension, because it creates curiosity for your reader or viewer.
Yep.
And the difference between what it is in, like, stories usually and what those TV shows that you mentioned do is that they then backtrack. These TV shows start you at this high moment of tension. It draws you in.
Inflection point.
Yeah, an inflection point. And it creates interest for you. And you're like, okay, who is this person? Why are they in their underwear in the middle of the desert? Why are they pointing a gun? Why is he next to a Winnebago? I have to see more of this. Yeah,
it creates what's known as an open loop for the audience to kind of answer all these questions somewhere in there. They're going to, but these questions are raised in their mind and they have to get the answer to them.
Right. And later. So we really liked that in all of those shows. Poker Face kind of does it too, but in its own unique way.
Right.
And so that was how we wanted to structure the pilot episode as well. We wanted to start at an inflection point and then build back up to it.
White Lotus, the latest season.
They all do that. Actually.
All the seasons do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a plot device.
It allows you to, what it does really is it allows you to start off kind of with a bang so that you do hook your viewer, but then you can slow the pace from that point forward. It gives you time to give a little bit more exposition. It gives you time to move towards that inflection point at a slower pace. And because you've already hooked your viewer, you've already killed somebody or somebody's already done something that's like, wait a minute, what just happened?
Yeah.
And
then you want to find the answers. And
that's why we really liked that, because we wanted a chance to explore Chloe and Lizzie, these two bandmates, more, because we haven't, in the test shoots that we did, we weren't able to do that at all, to explore who they are and where they're at in their lives.
Right. And one more point I want to make about those open loops and that sort of like, starting at an inflection point is like Poker Face does that. Like it seemed like they were in a meeting and they were like, how can we do an open loop at the beginning of every episode?
Yeah.
Not and just make that our format for every episode, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Now it kind of gets old after season 2 or 3 because they missed.
The way that they do it is that their main character is not in that open loop right away.
Exactly.
And so that's why you watch each episode, is they already reveal who the murderer is in that first open loop that tends to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's
it's pretty good
quite
job.
lengthy.
Can be.
And then the whole reason you watch the rest of the episode is because you're like, well, I want to see how Natasha Lyonne fits into this open loop.
Yeah, right.
And so that's kind of, another thing that we were sort of drawing inspiration from, where it was like, okay, in our open loop, we're showing these couple of characters, and then how do Chloe and Lizzie fit into all of this? So it's sort of like, where do these two come from? What do they have to do with this story?
Yeah.
And that's what unfolds throughout the pilot.
Exactly.
And so that pilot was finished in, I would say, like early January, right? It took us maybe 3 or 4 weeks to really write 50 pages of it. And I say that as if it's so easy, like, oh, we were just writing for 3 or 4 weeks.
I took those weeks off of work.
Yeah.
I was here all day, so we kind of had leisure to write whenever we felt like we could.
Right. But I mention that because I think sometimes one of the problems you run into when you are wanting to start any sort of big project like this is starting it. It's like, okay, the posted things helped us sort of map out the story, but that's not us writing it.
It's not us writing it. That was just doing beat sheets. And then you still have a mountain of, okay, how does this begin? What's the visual, how does this visually take place and hold on screen? And because my background is in more fiction writing and nonfiction writing, not screenwriting. Visual. You're going, wait, like, how do I do this now? Because fiction writing is much more dense on the page. You're writing about so much more than what you do on a screenplay. On a screenplay, you are only thinking about, what do we see and hear? The nuts and bolts. And then, you're on fiction writing, you're writing in paragraph format. So it's like you can make it super dense. You can make those paragraphs have a lot of detail. And that's what we did. That's what we did, because I was writing it as a book. That's right. Because that's the other thing that I want to do with this project, is write it as a book series. And so I wrote it from that format because I'm familiar with that, writing it as like dialogue, and then here's this action that happens, and here's this thing that goes on, and then you'd copy and paste that onto the script and reformat it into an actual screenplay formatting. Yeah, that was pretty much the way it happened. So that finally got it into there. It was like, just start writing some ideas, some scenes out. Right. And I would tackle the scene direction paragraphs and kind of start shaping those up. And you were just like hammering out a lot of dialogue. Yeah, because dialogue's kind of my strength. And but we also sort of split up certain scenes that it was like, okay, you do that beginning scene, you write the scene with the 2 goons. I'm going to write the dinner party scene with Chloe and Lizzie. Yeah. And then I also wrote the Hobbyland scene, and then I wrote a little bit of the party scene, It was just kind of like the way that I write is I just kind of whatever my brain comes up with, whatever scene pops into my head, I have to immediately jump on my laptop and just get it out. Yeah. And I might not finish it. I might not go, it's definitely not at the beginning of the scene, like the party scene. I was just like, oh, well, there should be a dead guy. I have this joke in my head about Chloe or Lizzie saying, now he's dead. And so I was just like starting to write that. Yeah. And what does that look like? What makes it funny? So for me, it just starts with like a line of dialogue that I then craft into a portion of the scene. Gotcha. And that's what I did for a lot of it. You sort of visualize these characters. Obviously, we know our 2 mains, but we know, okay, let's have a crazy moment where some dead guy comes in with a bag of money, and because we had talked about different ways. It's usually like, it's not even visualizing. A lot of the time, it's just me sort of having conversations with them in my head.
Like they're having a conversation. And
Gotcha.
I'm going, okay, where are they at when they're having this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I sort of just hear their two voices and how they're bickering and they're joking back and forth or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sort of, like you mentioned, thinking about how can we insert this important plot point, which is the bag of money, and when they discover that,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, because we went back and forth on good ways to introduce the money that they go spend and to, fund their
Right.
tour.
So there's a couple of things. Like I mentioned that just because we all kind of have different ways of writing things down. For me, inspiration usually strikes when I'm like in the shower and then I'm like, I gotta write this thing down.
Right.
Or when I'm listening to music.
Gotcha.
Because I listened to that one Pointer Sisters song and I was like, it would be hilarious if we had the shopping spree to I'm So Excited by the Pointer Sisters.
Right. That's one thing that I remember from a Tarantino interview. We all have our thoughts on Tarantino, but he said a lot of times he'll be like in his car, like listening to music, or it'll start with the track, and he'll go, "This is a movie song." You know what I mean? This is a great song for a movie. And then he'll craft a scene around that.
Right.
I could see that in some of his work. But another thing that we also did, it's kind of nuts and bolts, but it's pretty essential, is to go ahead and just get some kind of writing, screenwriting software or whatever. There's online versions. We use Writer Duet. I've used Celtics or whatever it is. Celtics. I don't know.
Celtics. I think.
I've used that. There's other ones. Final Draft. They're all pretty much the same. They just help you craft it in that format quicker.
Yeah.
And so, you don't have to do as much thinking on, how many space tabs over does this get
Right.
to,
Right.
to make it the proper formatting, because you want it to be proper formatting for sure, because if it's not, then no one will take you seriously
Right.
when you go to try and, either sell it or pitch it or whatever you're trying to do.
Right. And so we had that. That made the whole process a lot easier.
They made it easier. So you can just kind of go and transfer the prose format into that screenwriting software, and then it helps.
But for the pilot, we did sort of separate scenes into chunks, or I would have those random bursts of inspiration that I'd then be like, okay, it's on that doc, if you want to plug it into the screenplay. But then I think actually getting the script done, like getting it finished, it took us sitting down together and like combing over those scenes again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like sitting next to each other, just kind of going, okay, let's read through this. What's sucking here? What doesn't feel right? What is working?
And that's really been the case for this project to begin with, because these two characters were something that I wanted to write about for many years. Lizzie was definitely a character, but Chloe was not Chloe. She was somebody else. I think her name was Roxy.
Gotcha.
But I really liked this idea of two best friends / bandmates. It's a comedy, and they're, writing music and
riffing
they're off each other. I'm very much a fan of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and that kind of fast-paced humor, and, two sort of whip-smart females who are also kind of dumb.
A little ditzy.
Just they make bad decisions.
Yes.
But I didn't...
Which we all do. We can all identify with that
I
in some
didn't
regard.
feel like... I was writing another project at the time, and I was writing my book. And so I couldn't give them attention. I had to finish what I was doing with my book character. And so I always kind of, anytime I would get an idea for them, I would just quickly write it down and then put it aside. I didn't really sit down and write anything. I had a little bit of a short story that I started to write in my advanced creative fiction class. But other than that, I had maybe a 3-page screenplay that I did for the screenwriting class. Yeah. But again, they were still different characters. They looked different. They talked differently. And it wasn't until we were sitting down for this pilot, truly, and started, bouncing the dialogue back and forth and the pitch deck and everything that came before
Playing
that.
with the antagonist and what happens.
Yeah.
And all that.
That they became who they are now, and how that, us combining our creativity, us combining our brains, or us merging our weirdness together to create them is how they were actually born.
Yeah.
Because they've just kind of been sort of ideas in my head for several years.
Yeah.
And they've been ideas in our head for several years.
So it was just kind of like a boiling point for us. Like, oh, we got to make something. Let's make it on these two characters that we have already, built out in our heads.
So we have the short script. We finished the pilot in like January, I guess. And then we have to go back to life and go back to everything after the holidays. And we came across a short script contest that I think the deadline was either March or April of 2025. And we were coming to realize that producing this pilot script, which is 50 pages, give or take a few, was going to be very challenging.
Yeah, so we pretty much knew that we couldn't shoot 50 pages.
Yeah.
So, once we figured that out, and we realized if we want to try and shoot something in the summer, we need to basically pare it down.
Right. And so we came across this short script contest, and we were like, well, what if it was a 12-page contest. Like, your
right.
script had to be 12 pages long, and we were kind of like, well, we could write something that's 12 pages.
Yeah, we could get it down to that. Yeah.
Well, no, we thought we were going to write something else.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because with the contest, you won money. You won like 10 grand or something. And so we were like, well, we could write, we just wrote a pilot. We could write something that's 12 pages long. And then we were like, we should just try to use what we've already written. Don't start from scratch. Like, let's actually see.
Let's just write something so that we can shoot it, because
right.
That way we
that
can
was
actually
really
use
our
it.
goal, is to do something in the summer of 2025 to actually produce something from and with these characters and with this world. And so that short script contest sort of gave us another deadline to be like, all right, let's pare it down. Let's do something. How are we going to take 50 pages and turn it into 12?
We just decided, all right, let's sit down and chop this thing up.
Yeah. And so what we did was we said, what are the key moments that we feel are A, important to the story? Mm-hmm. B, that if you were to trim down this pilot, what is like the, trimming the fat, so to speak? Mm-hmm. What can you cut away that isn't necessary? And C, what are our favorite scenes? Mm-hmm. Like, what scenes do we love? Because I remember going through the pilot script and being like, oh, I love this joke. I love the dead guy scene.
Yeah.
I really want that in there. But how do we...
How do we weave it all together?
Because that scene happens in the pilot in a completely different context than what... Mm-hmm. They go to this party because their gear is stolen... And that's after they go to a dinner party.
Yeah.
So they're at this party that they don't even know where they are. And then this stuff happens. And then this dead guy gives them money.
Yeah.
Or this guy who's dying gives them money. And so it was like, that's really long. That was taking up 12 pages in and of itself.
We knew we couldn't show that whole scene.
Right. And so it was like...
All the jokes kind of had to be... thrown out to some degree.
Well, the whole context of the scene. Yeah. We gave them a completely different reason to be at that party.
Right.
And so that's what it takes when you're doing something that you have so much more material for, this long form, and you're paring it down. You have to ask yourself those questions, like, what is actually necessary here? What is necessary to this dead guy scene? Oh, that they get the money. Mm-hmm. What's necessary to this diner scene? Oh, that they are getting ready to leave town.
Right.
Like, all of those scenes that are in this short film are in the pilot, but they're in there in different ways. Mm-hmm. And so we just sort of reorganized the pilot and figured out the main point of each scene and what the takeaway was. And we had to cut a lot of scenes and a lot of other characters that are in the pilot.
Right.
To get it down to this 12 page, and we never got it to 12 pages. I think the shortest I had it was 15 pages.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And then I don't know, it just started kind of gaining a little more traction after that.
Well, I think a big part of what, happened there was as we started to pare it down to these specific scenes, we started to realize that the format that the longer format, it's not going to work out in terms of the order as well as like how many characters we had. Mm-hmm. But we also realized that we wanted to kind of start making these characters, especially the antagonist and sort of the relationship between all 4 characters that are in it, have more meaning. And so we started to like relate them to ourselves and our own sort of ambitions, I guess. I think characters.
You're kind of jumping ahead because as we had maybe 15 pages. We missed the deadline for the contest.
Right.
And we knew that we were like, well, we could still shoot this thing in the summer. Right. We can produce this, but because we had removed so much of what was in the pilot, we removed quite a lot of the story that was there too. Mm-hmm. And we kind of hit a wall with some of it. We were like, how does this really end? We know that we want it to end with them like going on tour, so to speak, but how do they really get there? Because the other way is much, much longer and much more elaborate.
Right.
And that's where we were kind of like, I don't know, like where does the character of Anthony come in and all this stuff, and how does this happen? And that's where it was like, well, what if we thought of these 2 as ourselves in writing this and making this short film? Like we began to approach the project as, like you said, a metaphor for our own experience of writing the project, of creating this short.
Right, of actually just, getting your shit together and doing the thing you want to do. Right,
and so that became the theme of the short. Right. Where it was like, these 2 characters of Chloe and Lizzie are talking a lot about doing this thing, just like we were talking a lot about making this short film and making this world, building this world. And sometimes you have to have a gun to your head, so to speak. You have to have these deadlines. You have to have these things that push you to act,
right?
That push you to grow. Otherwise, you're just going to be 2 kind of like jokey idiots talking about the thing the whole time.
Right.
And then you also have to have that other sort of voice in your head, which is what Anthony represents, of like, you can do it, but you have to get off your ass and do it.
Yeah. And then, you have the antagonist who in this story is just sort of like, you're never going to amount to anything or whatever.
Or you were stupid for thinking you could get away with this in the first place. Yeah. Like it was our sort of insecurity with this project and really any creative project, right? You always have that sort of imposter syndrome voice that's like, really? You're going to do this? Okay. Good luck, loser, you chump. And so that's what really helped us craft the short into something of its own.
Yeah.
Because we understood the theme more. We understood this is the takeaway we want for our audience. Mm-hmm. And this is how we can sort of build up to the, key moment in the short. And this is how we can still weave in elements from the pilot that tell the story of how they got the money. Yeah. We do it in a nonlinear fashion, which we really like to do.
Right.
And then we also have this moment of sort of victory and triumph, because that was our feeling of, hey, we're going to make this thing.
Yeah.
That was what we wanted to infuse into the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we didn't have enough time to really revel in that, but, it was certainly in there.
Right.
But yeah, and that's sort of, I think that was really just the one thing that for us made it have more meaning in our minds, what these characters were going through, because we could relate to them. you know.
Right. And we could write from our own sort of yearning to express ourselves and this yearning to do this creative project.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so...
And the challenges and roadblocks and everything,
right.
you sort of, maybe you manufacture yourself, or, you know, there's like a little voice in you that's sort of making, you know, talking shit.
Right. And so I guess maybe we finished that March or April of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And as any writer will tell you, writing is revising. So you have this, now it's a draft short film script. And we were very determined to produce. In the summer of 2025, we were going to make this short. We felt confident enough in it. We felt confident in the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And we started casting in June and doing pre-pro in June. And that was another element that actually shifted the story.
Yeah, definitely. And that was, we felt like a good short film, and we got a lot of sort of like, even on just the sides that or the description,
the actors,
you know, that we provided for the auditions and stuff, the actors really gave us great feedback. But we realized in the sort of, we did a remote casting on backstage we were just like, here's our budget, and we actually, we're, you know, going to pay these actors. So we got, you know, maybe 100, I don't remember how many.
Quite a number,
you know, a couple, 100 or whatever, applications. And, you know, so many just bubbled up to the top that we wanted to look at. Well, we had thought of these characters as late 30s, maybe even almost pushing 40. And so we had, you know, that was in the descriptions. And so we were getting sort of these actors that were in that range. And there were some really great actors that read
definitely
in that sort of age range. And we really, you know, realized though in that process, we had a couple younger ones, and we realized that these two characters that we had written were just not in that sort of age range.
Right. And so that's something that I wanted to talk about in terms of like your job as a writer in whatever format you're writing, like if it's a screenplay or book or whatever, it's to not get in the way of the story. And we were so sort of fixed on them being older in life and being in that like 35 to 40-year-old age range. Not that that's like old.
Right. No, but I mean, for two people who are trying to be rockers.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of is.
And so that was the mindset that we had in writing this pilot and writing the short.
Yeah.
And so we had this sort of fixed idea of who these characters were. And that was getting in the way of the story. That was getting in the way of all the writing. That was getting in the way of us and our freedom and our humor. Because it put a limit on what we felt they would say and what we felt they would do. And it... When we heard some of these actors who were within that age range read the lines that we had written, we didn't buy it. Not because the actors weren't good, but because that character didn't go with the lines in the script. And so once we had, it was really the two stars that we casted, the two leads, Grace Maddox and Ariana Pantaleo. When we had them read for these characters, they brought something out that wasn't on the page that me as a writer, I was like, oh my God, we have to put that more on the page. We have to have more of whatever it is that they're giving us onto the page. I would say Lizzie was kind of close to what she is now. Chloe was the one that needed a lot of metamorphosis and a lot of like loosening up and a lot more silliness. And so having these two actors, let's say they're like age 26 to 29, sort of taking back that age dial, allowed us to lean into what these characters wanted to be, which is like a sort of Bill and Ted, a female Bill and Ted.
Right.
Whereas we were trying to make them into almost like a Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, like Saul Goodman. You're sort of further along in life and you're just a screw up. Right. That's not what the story wants to be. And so once we let go of that, the writing got even better. The story got even better because you could then have fun.
We were telling, I think, better jokes, or
Yeah.
they these two characters had more energy between them. And we just weren't really seeing the characters past 32 or something,
Right.
33 or something like that. When we started, really writing for that.
Right. And so we were auditioning these actors in June, and we're thinking of shooting either late July or early August, and we're kind of going,
Yeah, we gotta kind of start reshaping this a little bit, making this character a little more fun, especially Chloe.
Yeah, and knowing that the story needed more. The story needed more out of all of the characters. And so that's what's funny, is that even though we felt like we had sort of a finished short film script in March or April, it really was never done until we started shooting in August.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the other things we changed like last minute, but that's true. Once we actually had our cast, it was sort of like, okay, you're actually going to have to do this because you have other people involved that you're telling that you're going to do this. So it was another thing. It was like the gun pointed at your head now.
Yeah, and then it was also, so it was casting the actors, but it was also the other elements of pre-production, especially the treatment, creating the treatment.
Yeah.
Because, and mapping out wardrobe and hair and makeup, that's where you really start thinking about the characters, and you start going, oh, well, then there's so much more I can do with them on screen. Like, you're thinking about their personalities as you're crafting this treatment. Who are they? What do they look like? Where do they work? What music do they listen to? What clothes do they wear? How do they style their hair and makeup?
Yeah, answering a million questions.
You're answering a million questions, and you're thinking a million questions about
what's their backstory.
About the story, and then you go, oh wait, well, there's so much more than I can do in this short script. Like, I can add a little bit more to that diner scene because it's not quite funny enough. Like, it's, like I was saying before, you have to not get in the way of the story. You have to prune and improve as you're revising the work. You have to prune away what isn't working, and you have to trust your instincts that when you hear these actors say these lines, like in particular, I'm thinking of the diner scene when we were doing auditions, or also when we were doing rehearsals in July. We're going through and they're saying this, and I'm listening to it, I'm going, there's just something about that diner scene that's not working. The lines just aren't there yet. And it's the first scene, it's the first few lines of the work, or of the short. So it's like you have to just pay attention to those cues that you have when you hear someone read it aloud. That you go, if it feels like it's off, it probably is. And so the diner scene and the scene with Anthony at the end were really the two that took the longest to evolve, because it was like, they're not quite where they need to be. And I don't know what it is that they need to be quite yet. I just know that it's not it.
Yeah.
And I think we got there probably at the very end of July. And we were set to shoot August 14th, 15th, 16th, or 15th, 16th, 17th.
Yeah. But yeah, so we, it's just sort of like keep coming back to it, and sort of as you do the table reads, as you do the rehearsals, go in there and tweak it a little if you feel like it's not working or something, or if you feel like there could be something juiced up here or there.
Right.
Or write in some alt lines and stuff if you want to try some different things.
That, and like also kind of pay attention to what your actors are doing, because Ariana and Grace have a lot of spontaneity, and they always brought new things to each rehearsal. We didn't do too many rehearsals. We didn't want to like waste their time, but you could tell that they were engaging with the work, and it gave me ideas as a writer, like, okay, she does this with her hands, or okay, I'm going to take out that thing because they're not doing it, and they did it one time and it didn't really work anyway. So let's you have to pay really close attention to the script as you are working with actors, and again, paying attention to what is and isn't working, and not ignoring those signals, and just giving those, like, as the script moves towards this point of finality, this point of completion, it does so because you go from making these big changes to making these tiny little tweaks and these, you know, like you think of gardening, like you're pruning away some of the leaves that don't need to be there. They're dead. That joke I've been holding on to that joke. It doesn't need to be in there. It's not working, you know?
Right.
Or like the scene with the house party when they're watching the band. We met the band and we realized we need to make it more obvious that these people know how to play their instruments.
Right.
So we've got to change that scene.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to write in the jokes better.
Yeah, and then finally, kind of leading up to like the prop from hell, which was the van, and basically we wrote in an old piece of shit van, and we could not find one that we could actually get to set that somebody would either drive there. I mean, I was borderline going to buy one for a couple grand.
Because the whole joke of that prop was that they have all this money and they buy this really shitty tour van because that's what bands usually tour in.
Yeah,
these shitty, you know, 1980s Chevy vans. Right. We found one on, I think it was on Facebook, but it didn't run. Like the guy was like, I don't know if it can get over to that college.
We didn't realize that it didn't run. You know, it was like kind of a wild goose chase. And so we ended up with our AD. He's, you know, at the beginning of the project, he was like, my sister has a van. And I was like, what kind of van? He's like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, Sprinter kind of thing. And I'm like, nah, that's not gonna
like
work.
We had this idea of what the van needs to look like.
Yeah. And so we the whole time we were kind of going, maybe we should call him, you know, or you know, put a bug in his ear. Hey, see if your sister will let us use the van for the weekend.
Right. Because we found vans off the street.
We would put cards on people's windows.
We would write little notes like, hey, we want to put your van in a movie. And we got a couple of phone calls.
Yeah, that was a good way actually to find somebody because if it had lined up with their schedule, then we would have been able to use their shitty van.
It just didn't line up with their schedule.
Yeah.
But the point of all that was like in the script, we had, you know, this van, this old van. Well, we don't have this old van. We have a Sprinter van. So now we got to rewrite stuff that where the van is mentioned.
What he's like, you know, referring to the van being a piece of shit and, you know, why'd you buy it?
It's clearly not a piece of shit.
Clearly not a piece of shit anymore. And so now he has to say, you know, this thing's got a fucking spice rack, you know.
Yeah. And so the whole point of that is like, it's through both the audition process, the casting process, the rehearsal, and the pre-production when you're finding your props and when you're really getting all the wardrobe and things for your characters, that your script is also changing. Yeah. And you have to be open to those changes. Right. Because it's really not until you start shooting that the script is what it is. Yeah, it's true. No, until you cannot fuck with it anymore. Yeah. Then, I mean, because it literally, if you did not shoot for another year, you'd still be messing with that script. You'd still go, all right, I got to change this, I got to change that. Yeah. I mean, up until the day of shooting, probably. Because everything is a little bit in flux, especially with locations and props and things that may have to change. And what is interesting now that we've kind of we're almost kind of full circle with it, is that now that we've written that short, and it, you know, the writing on the page feels energized, it feels in line with the characters, it feels in line with our style, it feels in line with all of the characters, not just the leads, but it has life to it. It's like, okay, now we have to go back to the pilot that we wrote last year and infuse that with what we have in the short script, because we realized a lot of the things that we did that we really like in terms of just the story. Yeah, and the format. And the format and the whole evolution of how they find this money and how they're sort of captured and propositioned. You know, they're not propositioned in the short. And so it's like, okay, well, what do we want to do? You know, it opened up a lot of new possibilities for updating that pilot script and then even writing the next episode of the series. And so that's sort of the takeaway. Is that writing this long form project was so beneficial to us because it allowed us to get ideas onto the page. It allowed us to really think about the story, okay, beginning, middle, end, and then how do we play with format? And then working within these deadline constraints of a contest, saying we got to get this thing done by April or March. Yeah. And for us, we totally forgot about the deadlines. But that gave us the incentive to then distill that long form pilot into something that was punchier, something that we could actually produce.
Right.
And work within budget constraints.
For our first project.
For our first big project.
And, obviously if you want to do a longer form, a 50-minute or a feature, 120 or 90-minute or whatever, you probably need to do some smaller stuff first and kind of get the feel for it and try and get, something that really, learn a lot that way. But obviously, try and build it up as much as you can, make it big,
right?
Which is what we wanted to do. We live in Colorado, and not in Denver. We probably have found some actors in Denver, but we knew that we wanted to make it sort of to open it up to the whole U.S. to just kind of find the right people that to play the roles, and we. Succeeded at that, I think, much more than if we would have just stayed in Colorado. I mean, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I mean, casting the leads that we casted allowed me to better visualize who these characters are.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you can go back to the pilot script where Chloe is still a little bit humdrum and they're actually both still 35, 40.
Right.
It's in that age range. So they're not even the stoner Bill and Ted that they've evolved into.
Yeah.
And so
we have to go back and kind of look at it.
Right.
Yeah. Which actually, I think one of the things that we are still, working with is we've decided to hire a writer to start doing some other projects with. And so we're going to bring this writer who we feel is really good into the fold and see if he wants to be involved in the rewrite.
Right.
And so there's, I think it's a good thing to do is find other people to look at your work, find other people to maybe perhaps help out, especially if they have experience and or connections. It's good.
I would say also another thing that has helped us, at least, because we're going to return to the pilot very shortly. That's next on our
in a matter of weeks
agenda for this project, because we're in post-production. We're almost finalized with post-production for the short that we shot in August.
Yeah.
And so working through that post-production process where you're seeing what the actors do and how, I should have written that into this. I should have made this direction clearer in the script. Well, now I know I can put that in the pilot. It has it's opened my eyes to a lot of things that need to be included in that pilot, because it's that's really funny when they did that, or they didn't do that. I wish we could have made that, clearer or whatever.
Yeah.
So that even the post-production process informs the writing again,
Right.
Because the pilot now is going to become something that is, if this short film is sort of a truncated version of the pilot, we're then re-envisioning the pilot as this extended version of this short film that we shot, without feeling like, it's just a drawn out short film.
Yeah.
There's elements that we had to take out for the short script that we want to definitely include and that are already in the pilot.
Yeah.
We just have to sort of flesh them out more. And then we are going to be working with that writer to
punch it up.
Yeah,
exactly. Make, our jokes landing, and they'll have our short film, which we will be, launching out and premiering
very
January,
soon,
February, to sort of guide the process maybe in some way. And so I think, that's kind of the writing process there. And
well, I mean, that's the degree. Sort of big picture look at how we even wrote a 50-page pilot for a project and then turned that pilot into a short script, and now how we're going to be rewriting the pilot for Queens of Noise.
Yeah, and then so the next phase is to just, obviously launch this film, the short film, run it on festivals, and then try and, as we're redoing this script, get an agent, get it out there, and hopefully have it on streaming services near you.
And here on Substack, we encourage subscribers, right? We want to get, share this with everybody that you might know who has an interest in filmmaking, who wants to have some tips on writing, right? That's probably our big takeaway for this is we hope that you found this helpful. Hopefully it's given you some ideas and some tips for your own writing process. But, here on Substack, we are sort of running the paid subscriber end of it, and paid subscribers of this podcast get the zine of the short film, the short film zine, which has it has movie stills, it has stills from the short, it has character breakdowns, it has some fun content, but it's basically the short film in zine form. And so when you become a paid subscriber, you get that.
Yeah.
You get the digital zine.
And then, of course, you are helping support the future project that we're pushing towards, which is the
to help
pilot.
us make this pilot episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you can't become a paid subscriber, we do love it when you like and share and restack and just give it to all your friends because it is free to listen to.
Yeah, we appreciate your support.
And be sure to follow us on social media at Queens of Noise Film. We're on Instagram and Facebook.
As well as YouTube. So, all right. Well, happy filmmaking, everyone. And we will talk to you in the next episode.
Goodbye for now.